Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. During my Exiles retrospective 2 years ago, I briefly talked about a Marvel line called New Universe. In case you haven't watched those videos, the New Universe was created by then Editor-in-Chief Jim Shooter in honor of Marvel's 25th anniversary in 1986. The original idea was actually to end the Marvel Universe altogether and reboot it, much like Crisis on Infinite Earths for DC's 50th, or the New 52 for DC's stupidity. However, because the regular Marvel line was profitable and they didn't want to mess with a good thing, they rejected the idea. No, instead they decided on a new universe, another line of books that favored realism. While the Marvel Universe does resemble the real world, let's face it, they have open contact with aliens, super tech is utilized by both the government and various companies, and there have just been very different catastrophic events that have killed or affected thousands, if not millions of people. The new universe was meant to be more reflective of the real world. Yes, there would be superpowered beings, but their actual powers would be limited in scope and they'd largely operate in secret. There wouldn't be magic or Norse gods running around with the ability to level cities. In addition, stories would be told in real time. A month passed between an issue's release, and the comic would have a month pass within it. Bear in mind that this was the era when multi-parters were less frequent. These days, Marvel and DC write for the trade, as it's said, with the assumption that it's a 4 to 6 issue storyline that'll be collected in a trade paperback. Would be kinda weird if this story also took half a year to resolve within the book. Strangely, despite the desire to not have supernatural elements in the book, aliens were A-OK, as 2 of the books were tied into beings from other worlds. In any event, the world as we know it is identical until July 22nd, 1986, when the White Light event hit the Earth and transformed every 2 out of 1 million people into paranormals, as they were called. However, while the Marvel Universe was profitable, it apparently wasn't profitable enough, because Marvel's then parent company, Cadence Industries, was threatening to sell off the company, and thus they had to cut corners wherever they could to increase revenue, slashing the budget for the new universe. Instead of hiring the top-tier talent Shooter wanted for the new universe, existing editors and new creators had to be brought in. Delays and the stalled launch of the series did not help, nor the fact that the books themselves didn't really hook readers, with today's book being one of the examples of one that really didn't. Efforts were made to save the line despite these problems, and by all accounts, they worked, retooling several characters and concepts and doing some more elaborate stunts that they couldn't do in the Marvel Universe, like blowing up Pittsburgh. By the end, the New Universe books were, in fact, profitable. So why isn't it still around today? Well, it's kinda like what we're seeing more and more of today. It's not enough to make money, you need to be making all of the money, all of the time, or you're not good enough. To be precise, it was decided that while the books made money, the costs and resources of making them could be diverted to other projects that would be far more profitable than them. After the official end of the universe, several characters got adopted into the Marvel Universe proper, and there were some revisits to the universe, as seen in the Exiles books with them. The concepts were also rebooted into a Warren Ellis penned book called New Universal. It was a series that had a very different Earth than the one established in the original, which was originally marketed as The World Outside Your Window. So anyway, here's a book about superhero football players. Let's dig into Kickers Incorporated #1.
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. Brodsky, you're not the smartest. Life out, you're not an artist. Anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he's a man punch, wears a birdie hat. Linkara, he has a magic gun. Where'd he purchase that? Linkara, coins, robots, Amazon and trucks. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
Your sports team is vastly inferior. That simple fact is plainly obvious to see.
So now that I've effectively teased you, how the hell did this book fit into a line that was supposed to be about stories grounded in realism? Well, the book was originally pitched by Tom DeFalco and Ron Frenz before the New Universe concept had been developed, with the original intention of it being tongue-in-cheek, high-adventure stuff featuring off-season football players. The book was supposed to be called Mr. Magnificent and His Team Supreme, which, yeah, that sounds amazing. Unfortunately, for some reason, Jim Shooter wanted kickers as part of the New Universe, wanting a sports book despite Tom DeFalco insisting the book wasn't about sports. It's a pity Shooter was fired in 1987. If he had managed to stay on to 1991, he could have seen NFL Super Pro finally get released and see his sports book dream. The cover is perfectly okay, featuring one dude standing on top of a platform with a bunch of wires hooked up to him. I get the impression that this is what Liefeld was trying to convey last week on Youngblood's cover, and instead just got the T-pose. The only hint that this has anything to do with football is the logo. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of people in identical outfits watching a guy in his underwear flex his abs while getting electrocuted. Birth of a hero! Oh, I get it! This guy is pregnant! We open with a preview page seeing our heroes running at the reader. Meet Mr. Magnificent and his Team Supreme! Meet them tomorrow at the Scottsdale Mall near the Arby's in the food court. Brick Wall! Certain people sit atop him. Dasher! They originally wanted Prancer and Vixen, but they were too expensive. Suicide Smythe! His superpower is deeply problematic. And the ever-delightful Doll. She's only delightful, though, if you buy her accessories. They specialize in the uncanny, the bizarre, the totally outrageous. And they finally met their match when encountering Marvel. And their saga begins on the very next page. How ironic would it have been if the next page turned out to be an advertisement? We truly open on a football game where the New York Smashers are 4 points down and only a few seconds left in the game. Number 12, quarterback Jack Magnaconti ignores the massive linemen diving for him as he attempts one last desperate pass. Oh, why bother? We know the Patriots are just gonna win again. Jack performs some admittedly clever strategizing. Well, I'm calling it clever. As a reminder, my sports knowledge doesn't extend to the point where I can distinguish football from rugby. By deliberately getting himself knocked out of bounds to stop the clock and buy his team a little more time. They pull off a gambit, pushing through the opposing team and scoring a touchdown that wins them the game. In the locker room afterwards, the team is congratulating each other on a job well done, save for the aforementioned Suicide Smythe, who was the one who scored the touchdown and is taking credit for it in the press. Another player, Dasher, has the body language of someone completely snooty while being irritated at Smythe's antics. Doesn't he realize that his silly antics only help perpetuate the myth that professional athletes are brain damaged? Because being boastful and full of yourself equals brain damaged? For some reason, he just had a wet bar of soap in his locker, so that when he finds it, he decides to slide it along the bench where Smythe is doing handstands, as you do when talking to reporters. Maybe Suicide could use it as a prop in his balancing act, and thus ensure that he does get brain damage. And indeed, Smythe slips on it and falls on his ass. He realizes who's responsible quickly and marches over to Smythe, but is blocked by Brick Wall. Out of my way, Brick! Dasher deliberately made me slip so that I'd look like a fool. Here's the proof! I mean, the soap was pretty obvious. Do you really look like a fool if you had an accident that was completely outside your control? No one else would dare bring perfumed soap into this locker room! No one else wants to smell nice in this locker room! I think the idea is actually that he's less snooty and more coded gay. I can't be sure, but in any event, Brick insists that there be no roughhousing in the locker room. Not that there needed to be, since Dasher soon learns that he's already been pranked by Smythe by replacing his expensive aftershave with liniment. Oh, locker room fun. Aren't there still reporters in there? Brick asks Jack about all the vitamin supplements he's been taking, wondering if they do any good. Who knows? My brother Steve makes it special for me, and he's the nutritional expert. He's been encouraging me to buy a Juicero machine. I think it'll be a wise investment. Too many people worry about vitamins and health foods when they should really be concerned with their financial health. The right tax shelter does wonders for one's sense of well-being, especially if you're a corporation. Later, Jack is driving home with his wife Darlene and mentions that they have to stop by his brother's work. You know how I feel. The man used to have a gambling problem. Gambling was just a way for him to keep active in sports after he ruined his knee playing college ball. So it's okay that he had a gambling problem. He also mentions that he owes Steve for practically raising him after their parents died. And indeed, it seems like he's definitely made something with his life, having built a large business selling nutritional programs to sports franchises and training camps. Thanks to the money he borrowed from you. Yeah, and he built a successful business with it. Did he never pay you back? What's the problem? Steve shows off a device he's been constructing, an intensifier, he calls it. Specifically, the idea is that it will stimulate an increase in muscle mass. Sort of like using steroids, only without the harmful effects. I'm working on a similar device for cocaine. It'll also decrease reaction time and increase strength by 10 to 15% over the long term. As such, he wants Jack to give it a try, who's only too eager to do so. Darlene is wondering if this is at all safe. Relax, Darlene. I've been testing it on myself for weeks, with no negative after effects. I mean, aside for excessive beard growth, in lots of different places. I just wanted to make it available to Jack, to give him an extra edge, before the league learned of it, and I had to submit my machine for FDA testing. Wow, a weird machine that recreates the effects of steroids that hasn't been approved of through the proper channels, nor has it been vetted for legal use by the league? You'd be dumb not to just step inside and let it have a party with your genetics. I'm pretty sure the same machine ended up in Power Rangers Operation Overdrive, or a David Cronenberg movie. Anyway, a few hours later, Darlene is talking with Jack about this whole thing in the park, worried about how he's so eager to be a part of this experiment. Listen, Darlene, every professional athlete is at the mercy of his body. You're constantly running the risk of a sudden, crippling, career-ending injury. So that's why I want to step into a weird machine that screws around with my body that hasn't been legally approved of yet. There's no risk at all to my career. Jack admits he doesn't think the device will work, but any shot to give him even a slight edge on the football field could make the difference. However, as they walk home, the white light event hits, and Jack is clearly dizzy and affected by it. The next morning, the two go in for the experiment. Steve activates the machine, warning that it'll take months to see any effects on his body, and instantly he's enveloped by a glow and Steven has to turn off the machine in a panic. I don't understand it. This isn't what should have happened. It's just supposed to buzz. Full disclosure, this thing is actually just a glorified vibrator. Jack is fine, aside from being dizzy, and his hair turning white, and turning into a friggin' giant. What the hell is with the art in this panel? His hand is bigger than Steve's head. They perform tests on him, but can't find anything wrong. Despite still feeling a bit sick and dizzy, the next morning, Jack goes for a run in Central Park. Some teenagers deliberately splash a puddle on him, thinking he's just an old man, but then Jack runs after the car and keeps up with them despite it going 40. You don't belong here anyway! These paths are reserved for pedestrians! Mr. Magnificent and Team Supreme! Keeping sidewalks safe from getting splashed on! He inadvertently rips the bumper off the car, finally stopping because of how shocked he is that he was able to do so. Steve is unable to explain the transformation, trying to figure out if there was some factor in his body chemistry responsible, when he gets a phone call from a gangster. Mr. Sloan, I was just about to call you. I haven't been able to raise the money I owe you yet. You know, when you think about it, gangsters in fiction always seem to be bad judges of credit lines when it comes to who they loan money to, given all the people who keep failing to pay them. Believe it or not, though, Sloan is actually understanding and offers to slip a few bets in for him to help even the score. His associate is confused why he's letting him get away with it just for his money to be used in a wacky research project. Mr. Magna Conti is an investment in our future, especially since his brother's one of the top quarterbacks in the league, and I need him for my fantasy football team. On the following Sunday, Jack plays a game and sends a pass over to Dasher, but his increased strength makes him throw the ball so hard it actually breaks off a few of his ribs. Realizing how he could have hurt him a lot worse, he makes sure to rein in his strength for the rest of the game. At the hospital, there are no hard feelings from Dasher, who's been keeping himself occupied. You'd be horrified to hear how some doctors treat nurses. I've been circulating petitions and organizing demonstrations to protest such chauvinistic behavior. Well, thank God they had a dude in there to tell them how to do that. Why was this scene even in here? Maybe we should stage a little protest of our own. Against what? Noise pollution. Oof. Look at him. A face full of pillow and he's still yapping. Some guys never learn. Did they just murder him? With Jack's newfound strength, the team is quickly able to win victory after victory. As public interest in the team grows, Jack and his friends find themselves the happy recipients of sudden fame and unexpected wealth as they become involved in music videos. We are the world. We are the football. Charitable events. Book signings to help stop performance-enhancing materials. Product endorsements. Caught in a snowstorm, drink this pink soda to keep it off of you. Television commercials. Unfortunately, they were to promote the Atari 5200. After some more antics between Dasher and Smythe, a growing depression from Jack, and increasing worries from Steve about how none of his other test subjects are experiencing the same things as his brother, the Smashers successfully win another game that puts them in for the Super Bowl. And Jack is sad about it. At the same time, Sloan goes to Steve and calls for a favor. He's willing to eliminate Steve's debt entirely if he can get his brother to either win or lose the Super Bowl game by no more than 17 points, threatening his life if he doesn't comply. Steve, not wanting his brother to know about his connections to Sloan, or his return to gambling, doesn't mention what happened. And Jack wants to know if the effects of the intensifier can be reversed. I have such an advantage over the other players that I almost feel like I'm cheating when I take the field. That's because you technically are, Mr. Magnificent Cheater. That night, Jack talks with Darlene about the whole thing. In particular, his suspicions that Steve has been gambling again and wants to teach him a lesson by throwing the Super Bowl, but he also doesn't want to screw over his whole team by doing so. He admits he wanted an edge, not a guarantee of victory like this has been. There's no thrill in the victory when he knows he's gonna win every game. I wish there was someplace I could go to for help, but no one's set up to handle offbeat problems like mine. There just ain't any place I can go. Damn it, if only we were part of a larger universe where Thanos was attacking every 5 minutes. Then people would be able to understand my problems. And thus the Super Bowl is played, and the Smashers win by a huge margin. It's done in New Orleans like the real 1986 Super Bowl was, and ironically, it was still a pretty big margin in the actual game. In the comics, 65-17, whereas in reality, it was 46-10. Jack flies back home early to see if Steve has made any progress in reversing his condition, but when he arrives, he sees Sloan and his men having just shot Steve by accident. Idiot! That creep cost us a bundle on the game, but I only wanted to bust him up, not kill him. Steve, I'm very sorry about this. Tell you what, the debt's off. We cool? Okay, sounds good. Jack storms in and attacks. Stop him! We can't leave any witnesses behind now! Then maybe I shouldn't have come to beat up the owner of a large company right inside of his building. I mean, maybe money is so down that he couldn't afford security cameras, but that seems unlikely. Come to think of it, why did he need a loan from these guys anyway? Considering the large office building and the sign out front, shouldn't his company be doing really well? Or has the company been failing so badly, he and 3 other dudes are the only employees and they only occupy this laboratory and the break room? The worst part is that Steve keeps stealing their lunches and claiming he needed to test the device on their food. Jack beats up the crooks and gets some dying words from Steve, admitting that he's sorry and that this wasn't supposed to happen. We cut to 3 weeks later, where Jack is explaining this whole thing to Darlene, Dasher, Brick, and Smythe. The crooks are awaiting trial, and he plans to use the intensifier on the 4 of them. Love to know how that conversation went with Darlene. Hey, honey, you know that device that increases strength and essentially screwed over both my life and got my brother killed? You want to get a hit of that? I have no idea how the hell Jack even knows how to operate the machine. He kinda came across as a meathead throughout the story. Anyway, he explains that he was selfish, using this new power for his own glory instead of trying to help people with it. But now that he has fame and fortune, he's gonna put their talents to good use, setting up a foundation to help people with offbeat problems like his. Still sounds like charity work for me. Why not give it to the United Way? Why go to all the trouble? Because of the tax advantages, dummy. And it should be fun. Yeah, we could write off all our travel and entertainment. How about if I bought a new cycle or sports car for the foundation? All tax deductible. Our heroes, everybody! Like, all those things are perfectly fine, especially for an organization like this, but it doesn't instill much confidence in their virtuousness when Brick says the main reason to do this is to pay less taxes. This'll be great, guys. It'll give us something important to do in the off-season. Excuse me, Mr. Magnificent and Team Supreme, I need your help. I'm on the run from a criminal organization and Whoop, let me stop you right there, man. I'm sorry, but can't help you. We're right in the middle of our football season. And so our comic ends with the team needing to come up with a name. It's got to shout to the world that we intend to kick some serious butt. Wait, that's it! Butt punchers! You dumb kickers are gonna need a lot more than a new name if you break my lamp. Hey, that's not bad. We are the Lamps! And thus they form Kickers Incorporated. And soon they were investigated for tax fraud. This comic sucks. I admit, there's not a lot here that's too terrible, but it's not very interesting. The pathos for Jack isn't bad, realizing just how much this treatment has screwed over the excitement and challenge of his profession and made it feel hollow. But the story itself is pretty contrived. Football player gets access to super duper powerful machine that grants him super strength because of the white light event. There's also not a lot here that's particularly endearing about these characters. As I hinted at with the ending, the others are apparently only in it for the amenities, not for actually helping people. They also don't have any problems with the fact that Jack used this device to essentially cheat and not have it be their own natural talent that led them to winning the Super Bowl. Jack fares better as a character since he's in it to help people and clearly cared about his brother, who also was pretty good, trying to claw his way out of a bad situation while genuinely caring for Jack. But as I said, he's a bit of a moron and is all too happy to let his body get scrambled because his brother wants to test it on him. Darlene is sensible, but most of the story she's there either as emotional support or to poke Jack about how she doesn't trust Steve. The issue is just kinda dull, unless you enjoy seeing a bit of football and one page of superhero action. I don't see why anyone would want to keep reading this book for very long. There's nothing about it that isn't done better elsewhere. Next time, we're going back to early Image, since there are still a few titles from its founding members that we haven't looked at, with the first issue of Savage Dragon. Next month, the fun really begins when the Kickers discover there's a robot in my rose garden. The world outside your windows, my friends.